Hey there everyone, I've been gone for a few months, so if you're checking back in with this video, thanks for stopping by. Life update. I got married, which is awesome. I'm incredibly happy about that. I also had a major surgery, so it's been a busy time. Those obviously ate up a lot of my time for a bit, but it's not the only reason that I haven't posted in a while. I've come to realize that the reason I've been struggling with making another YouTube video, it comes down to anxiety, which I'm sure a lot of you guys could relate to. I've had loads of anxiety when it comes to posting videos, so that like when it doesn't do well, I'm like, oh well, it didn't do well. But when it does do well, it makes me worry about posting something that won't do as well. So it's like suffering from, it's stupid to say suffering from success, but it's kind of that, where I'm just like, oh, I can't follow that up. So like after the Encanto video, I was wondering if I should completely rework my channel to focus on those sorts of video essays. And that was kind of paralyzing because the thought of only doing that started to wither my creativity a bit. Not that I don't want to do more of those, but it's like that alone would kind of kill me inside, I think, if I was pigeonholed in only doing that. And then even the D&D content I was starting to put out was starting to wear on me. Like, I only have so much to say about one game when there are so many other great games out there that interest me. So all that stuff was bouncing around my head, making things harder and harder to do and share things that I would feel confident enough to share with people. So I'm not going to try to worry about the numbers or try to chase them. I'm pretty sure I'd just stop making videos altogether if I started making videos about things I didn't care deeply about. So this channel is now about my creative journey through games and storytelling. Whatever shape that takes is going to be what interests me. And if you want to stick around for that, dope. I'm so happy to have you here. So all that said, I do have something to show for my time away from camera. I made a board game. The game is called Passing Muster Landsknecht. I know it's a weird word, but it's basically a drafting card game for 2 to 6 players where you play a corrupt colonel in the Holy Roman Empire in the Renaissance era. Very specific concept, I know, but bear with me. Your goal is to muster up a warband for an upcoming campaign, but keep as much of the money you were given to do that as possible. But you can't win the game if every single one of your opponents has a stronger warband with you, because that would be super embarrassing. You'd be in disgrace. You'd be in disgrace. Stupid. So you're building this tight economical engine throughout the game while trying to throw spokes in the wheels of the other players' engines. I wanted to make this game because I've been so interested in game mechanics recently, and custom content for D&D was just not quite scratching that itch. I went with a drafting game as a design challenge and a way to limit the scope of the game to something achievable, and I went with a tight economy focus because I'm really interested in games where resources are limited. For the theme, I went with the pike and shot era of European history after watching several videos on the time period from the Sand Roman History channel on YouTube, which I highly recommend if you're interested in that time period. The videos are pretty high quality, well-researched, and fantastic art. So I went and built a prototype of the game in Tabletop Simulator, and I've had several rounds of playtests and revisions with my friends, and I think it's time for more public playtesting. If you think you might be interested in trying it out, you can do so right now. It's available as a workshop mod on Steam, and I'll leave a link to it in the description. I'll also include a link to the PDF of the rules as well as the PDF of all of the cards listed out, especially since this is a game that grows more strategic when you get more familiar with the cards. If that's all you need, I bid you well. Please leave me any feedback you have. You can do that in the workshop mod, in the comments here. You could email me, but just please mention how many players you've played with, because that will help me, because I've balanced it differently for different amounts of players. I need a lot more playtesting with like 2 players and higher player counts. I think it's really well balanced with anywhere from 3 to 5, and just let me know how you feel. I think I'm going to make a Discord with for the game with a looking for players channel, as well as a place to leave feedback. I don't know how long I'm going to leave the Discord up, since I don't really have the time to moderate it, and I don't want anything bad going on there. But if you want to volunteer to mod, or you want to use it as a way to find a group, it'll at least be up for like a few months for sure. For everyone else, I'll go over how to play the game now if you're interested in learning how to play. The game is divided into 3 rounds of 7 turns each. At the end of each turn, you will total the war score and cost on your cards separately. At the end of each round, you must pay the total cost by placing the guilders from your war chest back to the supply. The player with the most guilders at the end of the game is the winner, while the player with the lowest war score cannot win, regardless of how many guilders they have. If there is a tie for guilders, the player with the highest war score between them is the winner. If there is still a tie, those players share the victory. Here's how to set up. Each player starts the game with 50 guilders, or coins, and a coin purse as their war chest for assembling their army. Players put the guilders within their coin purse to hold secretly. They place the remaining guilders near the center of the table as the supply. Place the round tracker in the center of the board, and the round tracker token on round 1. Place the war score track above it. Each player chooses a player board and places a war score token matching the color of the player's board at the 0 on the war score track. Randomly select one player around the table to receive the muster token. There are 5 decks in the game, each one representing a city you can visit for recruits, and each one favoring one of the 5 suits in the game: pike, shot, noble, artillery, and camp follower. There are also wild cards that can be played to any suit. Assemble the decks by removing cards with numbers in the bottom right that are higher than the amount of players you're playing with. For instance, if you're playing with 4 players, remove all cards labeled 5+ and higher. Place the assembled decks with the city side facing up within reach of all players. Ensure that each player has enough room in front of them to place cards down. Now you are ready to play. Turns. At the start of each round, starting with the player with the muster token and rotating left, players will select one city to visit by picking up 8 cards from that city. If there are no cards left in that deck, it cannot be visited. Once every player has their cards, they will choose one, placing it face down in the to play section and put the rest face down in the unused section. When playing cards, you must place them into one of the 5 columns called regiments, which are divided by suit. Starting with the player with the muster token, the players must reveal their chosen card and place it face up in front of them in one of the 5 regiments. If the card has an effect, resolve the effect after placing the card within the regiment. If the effect would target another player's cards, cards yet to be played in the to play section are not valid targets. After all the chosen cards are played, players will take the unused cards from another player around the table, starting with the player with the muster token and rotating left. The only player allowed to take their own unused cards from the previous round is the last player to pick up cards. When placing new cards, place them over top of the previous cards in their regiment, leaving only the top bar listed with their war score, cost, and suit uncovered. This will allow you to quickly calculate the values at the end of each turn and round. You can only place cards in a regiment matching their suit, unless a card specifies that it can be played in any regiment. If a card is wild, it can be placed on any of the 5 suits. At the end of each turn, all players update their war score token on the war score track. Players will use this spread of war score tokens to determine any card effects that refer to war score. Do not move your war score token during a turn. The players will repeat this process until there is only 1 card remaining, 7 turns, at which point that card will be discarded to a discard pile and the round will end. Compare the total war score around the table. The player with the least war score receives the muster token, while the other players with higher war score receive a bonus, noted in both the rules and on the round board. If players tie for any of the benefits, they both receive the bonus they tied for, but the next player goes one further down on the benefits table. For instance, if 2 players tied for second in the first round, they would both receive 4 guilders. The next highest player would receive the benefit for 4th place, not 3rd. The player with the lowest war score skips down to the least war score column of the table, either receiving the muster token or being unable to win the game. If players tie for lowest war score on round 1 or 2, the player with the fewest guilders receives the muster token, and the other player receives a guilder from the supply. If players tie for lowest war score on the final round of the game, both are unable to win the game. After receiving end-of-round bonuses, all players total up the cost of their warband and pay guilders equal to it to the supply. To repeat, the player with the most guilders at the end of 3 rounds is the winner, while the player with the lowest war score cannot win regardless of their guilders. If there's a tie for guilders, the player with the highest war score between them is the winner. If there's still a tie, those players share the victory. Running out of guilders. If a player must pay guilders, either to a player or back to the supply, but cannot pay the full amount, they go into default, and their soldiers begin to desert. They must immediately begin to permanently discard cards from their warband, receiving guilders equal to the listed cost. If a card's listed cost is 0, you instead collect 1 guilder from the supply for discarding it. Going into default is the only time in a game where a player is allowed to discard cards, unless a card otherwise specifies, and you can only discard cards to successfully make the payment, which immediately ends default. If a player is out of both guilders and cards, they exit default without having to pay what they owe and can continue to play as normal. Frequently asked questions. Question: if a card calls for me to do something in a suit, i.e. to pass or discard, and I do not have a card in that suit, what do I do? So the answer to that is if an action is impossible for you to do, you don't have to do it. For instance, if attrition causes everyone to discard a card in the noble suit and you have no cards in the noble suit, you don't have to discard anything. Lucky you. Question: if a card ability says another card, can I target the card I used to play it? The answer is no. Another card means you cannot target the card you're using for the ability. You can, of course, target a different card with the same name. Question: a card reduced another card's cost below 0. Do I gain guilders? The answer is no. The minimum cost and minimum war score of a card is 0, and it can't go lower than that. Question: do cards that buff other cards in the regiment also receive the buff, i.e. retired officer? The answer is cards with a buff listed instead of a cost or war score are assumed to start at 0. Since the retired officer grants the whole regiment a +1 to war score, it is assumed to be at 1 war score, since it itself would start at 0. The specialties of each city. The 5 decks in the game are each called cities, and each of those cities has a different specialty and a suit that it favors. Starting with Nuremberg, the military academy city, and its featured suit is artillery. The highly trained military engineers of the artillery suit have a higher cost than their war score, but have ways to increase their efficiency. However, without those cost-saving measures, they are anchors to many warbands, and it may be best not to be stuck with too many. Next, the City of Worms, the supply city. Its featured suit is the camp followers. This city supplies many of the camp followers to the warband, which can be essential, but a colonel's rule over the camp followers is not absolute, so they tend to be difficult to control. The city of Prague is the mercenary city, and its featured suit is shot. The gunpowder line of the shot suit have the most middling war score, but are core to any army of the 15th century. Luckily, you can just pay the cost of these warriors up front, just hope that they don't abandon your force with your coins still jingling in their pockets. The next city is Vienna, the city of nobles. Its featured suit is nobility. The nobility have the highest cost and highest war score. They are, however, reticent to face real combat, and many have connections that a clever colonel could make use of. And the final city is Florence, the gambling city. Its featured suit is pike. Florence is the home of the titular Landsknecht card. The pike suit are the rank and file. They either have low war score and low cost, but they also have gambling effects that could result in a big swing in the colonel's warband, for better or worse. If you stuck around and are itching to play, please do so and let me know how things go. Feel free to check out the Discord if you want to find other players or want to leave any comments or reviews. Otherwise, thanks so much for watching and thanks so much for playing. My name is Ben DeHart. I'll see you next time.